Evening, Matt.
Cheers, Graham. Nice to see you.
Great to see you. Welcome, everyone, to Crazy in Love, the podcast where two couples therapists talk about all things to do with modern relationships. Tonight, Matt, we are looking at an article that was published in The Guardian
Mm,
that came in quick succession to Valentine's Day. They asked their readers for recommendations for relationship tips in advance of Valentine's Day. We're recording this barely a week after Valentine's Day.
yeah.
We thought it'd be interesting to take a look at that list and do some rapid fire back and forth about what we think of. I think it's the 16 recommendations for couples in that article. I've got to
Yeah.
say, I was expecting the list to be an absolute crock of shit.
Horror show. Absolute horror show. I thought it'd be terrible. It started with a reference to a thruple as well, didn't it? Which is three people in a
You didn't
relationship
even know what that was, did you, Matt?
because it's The Guardian. Yeah, no, we just had to make sure that nobody who was in a three-way relationship felt excluded because that seemed important. But
Very.
actually, it's a pretty decent list, isn't it? We don't want to give the end away.
Yeah, we don't want to cast too much shade on the Guardian reading audience, but it is a pretty darn good list. So hopefully there'll be a bit of disagreement in there, but I think along the way there might be
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of agreement, with surprising amount of agreement with this list. So
Yep.
let's see
Agreed.
how we go. But I expect us to agree with quite a lot of it. We start then with the recommendation to make life easier for each other. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's good, isn't it? Very sensible. I think it's the heart of what we say about this from a very practical point of view. I think it's probably why people couple off in the first place, like through the sweep of evolution, so that there are two people doing it, so that there's backup, so that there's support. I find that really super helpful in the relationship, that there's another pair of eyes and ears. I often go off in the wrong direction, whether it's, some kind of problem with the school or, any number of other things that go on in my life. And I really value somebody else's input and take on that.
Good.
So I would much rather be in a relationship navigating life than not.
Yep, lovely. I
What
don't.
about you? Feel any differently?
The only thing I would say about this, and with a few of the other recommendations as we go, is they're tilted towards making life comfortable and easy, and bending towards what your partner needs and how
Yeah,
they want to live life,
I
which is
agree with that.
a
Yeah,
great
I agree with that.
starting point, but
Yeah.
has potential to be a bit conflict avoidant potentially.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great marker down. Let's carry on going through, but I think that's important. We'll come back to that, won't we? The second one was to lower your expectations, right? If we're reading from the same list.
Yeah, absolutely. We could say loads here, couldn't we,
Yeah.
about cultural expectations, romantic expectations. I think they're making a point about what relationships should offer you. We often come back to that idea
Yeah.
of modern relationships are expected to, in the same person, you're rolling up a kind of sexual partner, a friend, a confidant, someone who's going to help advance your career goals, someone who's going to bring
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Take it down a notch. Yeah.
Exactly. Take it all down a notch. They're one person, one very important person in your
Yep.
life amongst many.
Yep. Yep.
Probably
Yep.
the most important person in your life, but still lower your expectations on a day-to-day level of how much
Yep.
they could and should make you feel contented and happy, I think is a good starting point for a
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah. 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 I agree. Like maybe 10 seconds more. Sometimes I see couples towards the end of bringing up kids, and the kids have gone to uni or going off to uni or doing whatever it is they're doing, and there is a sort of like, oh, it's just us. They haven't really built a very rich life. It's been centered around the children, and like there is something there about all the way through, like that person doesn't do everything, can't do everything. You will get to a point where life isn't like life for you and me is, we're pretty much in the rush hour, aren't we, with kids and
Yep.
dogs and goodness knows what. But at some point it all slows down, and if you haven't built a rich life, I think that's sometimes where the problem comes in. So just as I guess, just expand your point about somebody not being able to be everything to you. Just be
That's helpful.
practical, be sensible about that.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Number three, laugh together. I'm a little bit more skeptical about that, but
Yeah, I didn't care for this one. Did the order wrong. I hope you'd get to comment on this, but it's landed with me. No, I mean, I'm not particular. I mean, yes, fine, right? I would say with lots of laughs in my relationship. I really enjoy that side of it, but I wouldn't necessarily put that front and center. Not now. I would also say like there's a bunch of like things that I find funny in the world that I think my wife yeah, frankly does not. We don't share precisely the same sense of humor, and I'm much more likely to ping on something which I think is laugh out loud funny to you or someone else than I am to her.
I agree with that. It feels like a bolt-on, nice added extra to a relationship rather than something that needs to be at its core for me.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's optional, isn't it? If you've got it, well, fantastic, good for you, lucky you. But I don't think I'd put it, right up there personally.
Good.
Um, this one is stated as "Remember, you're different, not better or worse," which I quite like. Did you feel the same?
Yeah, it's a little bit motherhood and apple pie, isn't it?
Mm,
I
mm,
think
mm.
I think what it plays to though is something that is quite important is the idea that compatibility actually isn't that important in a
Yeah,
relationship. It's important in terms of certain long-term life goals. If you want kids and your partner doesn't want kids, that's a big
yeah,
thing that's going to kind of get in the way. But in terms of the big five personality traits, etc., most of the
yeah,
evidence suggests that that difference isn't necessarily a preclusion to having a great relationship. So
yeah, yeah,
acknowledging those differences and not trying to bend yourselves towards each other and make each other a clone of each other, I think is good. Retain your independence, acknowledge your differences, and actually try and enjoy those differences rather than see them as annoying and a
yeah.
source of complaint.
Yeah, I hear you talk about that a lot, and I've taken that into my practice. The idea that you would be two different people, you would stay two different people, even through a thorough process of couples therapy, you would still have, a lot not in common. And I think when I see couples at their worst, they have decided that they are better or superior, or their judgment or their norms are more worthy and ought to be prioritized. So the example I sometimes give to couples is when my wife and I first decided on where to go on holiday, she talks to me about Greek island hopping and the kind of flexibility and fluidity that goes with Greek island hopping. It's my idea of hell. You haven't booked anything up. You don't know whether the place is available. You don't know what the square footage of the room is. It's not someone who plans. It's not their idea of fun. And I think when things go wrong, somebody is wrong. That's irresponsible. It's silly. This is a terrible idea. And the other person is boring or tedious or never wants to have any. So I hear that a lot. I hear that kind of complaint that they never want to go out. They only want to stay in. And so that's not really wrong, is it? It's just a thing. Some people are more cozy and more homey, and some people are more outgoing and given to novel experiences. I think that bit did resonate with me.
Yeah. Are you going to talk about the anecdote about the massive argument you had on the way to Heathrow that one time?
No, we'll save that for another pod.
Good. Learn how to have uncomfortable conversations is the next one. I think we'd both strongly agree with that that's a skill that you need, both in terms of making sure you're not avoiding the important stuff, but when you do disagree or argue, you know how to do that well and without too much emotional heat.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
think it's really hard, isn't it? This one. I mean, I,
hopefully,
I think it's so easy to say, right? It's one of those things where advice is of almost no use at all. It's like learn to have uncomfortable conversations, learn to be really, really good at tennis, learn to hit the forehand deep to the baseline with plenty of kick and spin. So that's hard, you know?
yeah, yeah. And I think with both of those, there's even a kind of even to conceptualize what that looks like, let alone put it into practice, is quite difficult. Like, what does a good conversation look like?
Yeah,
It looks
sure.
someone naming something different, the other person
Yeah.
validating that, them both having space to say what they feel and think.
Yeah.
They're validating each other, even if they disagree with each
Yeah,
other.
yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Yeah.
If they
I
say,
think that I think you've said like the really key bit there. I think the disagreement is where people get tripped up.
yep,
So I would probably say acknowledge rather than validate, but I don't think it matters. But like the
it feels
distinction
like
I'm
a
making
semantic
is that
point.
we've
Yeah,
heard
yeah,
what's been said, but I'm not agreeing, and I don't want to go. I still don't want to go on a Greek island hopping holiday, but we can talk about what
yeah.
it is you want, and I can tell you what I want, and we can either take turns or we can find a compromise or
Yeah, you realize how miserable you come across sounding. Like the idea of a Greek island hopping holiday being a
horrid,
miserable endeavor.
absolutely
Like, how
horrid.
privileged are you and your choices? Let's move on.
Love, honor, cherish, and accommodate. So these were the 4 words
So I noticed that
relationship boiled down to, according to Paul, who is, I guess, unsurprisingly
I was going to make that very point. It
from
didn't
somewhere in America, from Florida in particular. Love,
sound.
honor, cherish, and accommodate. So I think it's easy to mock, but it's not. It's not far off, is it?
Or I think the wording for me just made it sound like Paul, bless him, had been listening to a lot of Gwyneth Paltrow podcasts.
Yeah,
Love and accommodate, I'm
yeah,
comfortable with.
yeah.
Honor and cherish, I'm not even sure I understand what that means. I think cherish feels to me a little bit too much like putting your partner on a pedestal and kind
Yeah, it could be, couldn't it?
and seeing them as someone who you need to eradicate your needs and prioritize theirs. They're
Yeah,
this kind of
yeah,
perfect thing that you need to cherish. I
yeah,
think
yeah, yeah,
the way I would put it is a much more British form of words, something
yeah,
like appreciate what they bring to your life and be wary of the negative bias
yeah,
within your mind and be wary of how familiarity just breeds not necessarily contempt,
yeah.
but familiarity just breeds a sense of not taking not taking care of acknowledging the real positives that your partner brings you. That's a very British way of saying the same thing, but
Yeah, yeah.
that's how I'd describe it. Something like
Yeah, yeah, no, no, I'm fine with that. I think that's it's helpful, isn't it? I think there is something culturally distinct. I think a lot of relationship advice comes out of the US, has that kind of tilt on it. All of that sort of stuff around vulnerability, I think, makes a bit of sense to certain type of person in the UK and doesn't really fly with a lot of people I see. You know, we were talking in the last pod we recorded about people who are more towards the avoidant or cool end of that sort of spectrum. Their personality traits sort of veer that way. The idea of being vulnerable wouldn't be appealing to a lot of people. It would make no sense professionally. It's not what got them through their academic career and, you know, got them started in life or made them any money or gives them professional satisfaction. And it can jar that stuff, huh?
yeah, absolutely. Good.
Right.
Next, remember why you're together.
Yeah, I mean, it's motherhood and apple pie again, isn't it? But I don't think it's bad. It is definitely something I would use when I'm talking to couples. I really like to hear the story of why and how we got together because there's usually something in it. It wasn't just random. I mean, it is random, isn't it? You and I don't believe for a moment in soulmates, right? You went to the same uni or the same school, or you rocked up at the same office, or you joined the same hiking club or whatever, but there is something that drew you together that made you intrigued by one another, that, you know, ignited that initial liking and desire for one another and made the thing strong in the first instance. And that I think is worth reconnecting with. And often, you know, even 2 years on, but certainly a decade on, more than that on, often couples have forgotten that they're arguing about a whole host of things and those memories are a million miles away.
Yeah, I think of it, that piece of advice, remember why you're together, in some ways less about going backwards and trying to reconnect with why you got together in the first place, and more in terms of why you're together now, why you're
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
together for the future. It's not just about making each other happy, it's about potentially building something, building a life of meaning and purpose. Are you doing that together? Are
sure.
you helping each other in certain ways to live the lives that you want to?
Yeah,
How do we do that but also try and make your day-to-day life a bit more content? I think is something that's really worth bringing couples back to, because often they do get lost in that idea of you're not making me happy. Okay, what does
yeah,
that mean? What
yeah,
does that mean for you? Like, can we bring you back to something that you're trying to build together? Would that
yeah,
potentially make you happy?
yeah, 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 yeah. I agree. Doesn't always work out, and
Nope.
that's fine. Is the next piece of advice. I'm not sure how much needs to be said about that. It seemed to me to be a fairly sensible point. You know, it can be hard to be single, and sometimes it's not the end of the world, right? It's what you need,
Yeah, came
and the
from
reset is useful.
this piece of advice came from Seth in Wyoming, and I spent 6 months of my adolescence in Wyoming, and
Did you?
quite a lot of straight talking individuals, and it's
Yeah,
sounds like one of them. It doesn't always work out, and that's fine. I think that
yeah,
is a good piece of advice, that it's not necessarily anyone's fault. It's not necessarily a sign that you're never going to meet the right person, or
yeah.
I think we've mentioned on a previous pod that it's not a sign either that you need to spend the next 5 years of your life outside
No,
the
no,
relationship, working on yourself,
no. I agree.
doing lots of therapy before you get back in. You might just not have found the right person for you, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think it's a really good point. The one you made, maybe previous podcast, I can't remember, but that actually the way to get better at it is to be in a relationship. That just seems so right to me. It's like trying to learn to swim watching YouTube videos, isn't it? You've got to get in the water, got to have a real experience of the thing, I think.
I think so. Even if that's as an interim in therapy, I think that's where some of the best therapy can happen, is some of that acknowledgement of how another person sees you and what advice
Yeah.
they have from that place as well.
I really like it when I see people who are single for the time being or come to start therapy with me single, and then they meet someone. It's like, oh, well, it just got real. This is really, we're going to see exactly where we are because, okay, the Waitrose shopping turning up late didn't bug you and you're getting on better with your boss and co-workers, but let's see what jealousy looks like, and let's see why haven't they texted me, and why don't they turn up on time, and all of that as the relationship unfolds. It's a big testing ground, isn't it, to see how needy you still are and how vulnerable you are in certain places. And I don't say that lightly or without compassion, I hope, but it really is the testing ground for almost everything. It's quite easy to live on your own in the day to day,
Mm.
much harder, I think, to live with someone. I think John Kabat-Zinn, who's the kind of mindfulness dude, says that children are the living Zen masters, but I think partner as well, right? Constantly there, aren't they, to teach you and remind you and put you back in touch with what a um, you know deluded, self-centered fool you are. In my case,
Let's move on.
the only other thing I was going to say on that, and then I agree, let's move on, was if
It's
you
supposed
are
to be rapid fire, Matt. Come on.
if you're constantly bouncing through relationships and the breakup looks the same every time, was caused by your jealousy or temper or neediness or whatever it is, that's the bit where I would say, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and that's fine. It's probably not fine if you've got the same pattern showing up, with your neighbor, with your boss, with someone else. It's that sort of thing we're looking at, aren't we? When stuff breaks down, it can be a clue into what did I bring to this? What did I do wrong? What might I like to consider doing differently next time?
Yep. Yep. Good.
Next one applies here, Graham. I think learn to listen. Enough said.
Learn to know when to bite your tongue is also a podcast episode that we've done. Learn to listen. I mean, yes, but that can mean a million different things.
Yeah.
I guess there's a difference between listening and hearing, and that's something that you'd probably get in couples therapy. It's the
Mm,
difference between
yeah.
just the act of opening your ears and listening to the words is quite different from proving or evidencing to your point.
Yeah, I agree.
The
Yeah, I think that is worth drawing out. I think we would say something like assertive listening, wouldn't we, as well as assertive talking or communicating? It's like, can I understand what's being said to me? Am I allowed to check? I want to probe on this. If I feel someone's really listening to me, they are kind of, they're checking out, aren't they? They're like, can I just stop and test that? It feels like that feels like deeply respectful rather than somebody shutting up and waiting to listen or just going quiet, which I think can be the worst form of therapy as well. Someone just like, listening to you, but not adding to it, not allowing you to build, not pulling out, and checking whether there are other feelings there. And I think that goes to a relationship as well. You can sort of do a passive aggressive listen, can't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you can quite literally be listening while thinking about something else, or
Yeah.
kind of looking over someone's shoulder at who is more
Yeah.
interesting across the.
Yeah, or waiting for your turn, or you're going to demolish this
Yes.
argument with the truths and the facts. And I hear so many couples saying it wasn't last Tuesday, it
Yep.
wasn't last weekend, it wasn't at your sister's
Yep.
wedding, it
Yep.
was at your and it's like, now what is? Are we really doing this? So I think it's an interesting skill. My son's gotten really interested in people's social skills. He's commenting on it a lot, like, what do I think of them? And he likes to deconstruct these things. And it is interesting how few people can A, ask a question, and B, listen to the answer, particularly with children. They'll say, "Oh, do you like football?" And it's a very leading question, isn't it? My boys really like football, and they've got a lot to say about football. If you want to stop and listen, you're going to be here for a while. But they'll often, rush them through that rather than waiting for it to unfold. And I think you see the
Yeah.
same in everyday life, and I see it in relationships a lot. People talking cross purposes, or failing to sometimes stop.
And signals just that point about kind of not really wanting to wait it out and show genuine concern and interest in what your son has to say about Spurs,
Yeah.
it signals that you're not really interested.
You
You
weren't
might
interested in the
yeah,
first place. No.
really interested at all.
No.
You're trying to make some sort of connection, but you don't really care
Yeah.
about
My
it.
quick story, because I think it's kind of amused me. My son had some surgery at Great Ormond Street. He was born with a fairly minor birth defect, which had been sort of treated throughout his life, and then needed some follow-up surgery. And we were out pushing him, or maybe he was on crutches in the recovery phase of this. And somebody said to him, "Oh, football injury." And because he's the guy he is, he said, "Oh no, actually, I was born with a birth defect." And it's just the person asking was, I just didn't know where to put themselves, because they weren't asking whether he was okay with. It was just, it was a wild moment, that an adult parent then needed to save and say, yeah, but it's a relatively common birth defect, so don't want you worrying about it, and you've not,
You haven't made an enormous social faux pas. Don't worry.
yeah.
Yeah, nice.
But it was never really a conversation about disability or
Yep.
surgery or anything else. It was meant to be like, there's a boy in a football t-shirt who's broken a leg. My son broke his leg when he was similar age, or something along those lines. It was a sort of, they were going to tell us something, rather than genuinely ask what happened and be ready. That's the thing about asking, isn't it? It can go off in a bunch of different directions. How was your day? Could be, it was really awful and I'd like to unload. It was okay, I don't really want to talk about it. Or it was amazing and there's a really exciting opportunity for me in Hong Kong.
Yep. Yeah, and all of those are okay at different moments, but you've got to have all of them in a relationship at some point.
Yeah,
Good.
and it would be okay to say that sounds really important. Can we talk about it a bit, and then can we come back to it? That's the other thing about the
Yeah.
conversation, is it doesn't have to be right now. Just because you tell me at 11 o'clock at night, I can say, look, I got a heck of a day tomorrow, and I'm on the go from 8. Can we come back to this? Can we
Speaking
do
of which,
this
Matt, we've
justice at
got
the
we've got
weekend?
more. Come on, we've got a few more to go. Come on.
Go on, get a move on, and stop
The next,
stop
the next
listening
one.
so intently. Be honest. I'm
I,
talking too much. Be
yeah,
honest is the
okay,
next
the next,
one.
the next one is be honest. I think this is me asking you, even though you've just been rabbiting on for way over our allotted time. Be honest.
No, you've just been honest. We're talking too much. It's important, isn't it? And it's not devastating. Like you're right, and I can disagree. I can say no. This is highly valuable what I'm saying, Graham, and we should overrun.
I think honesty is one of the most crucial aspects, and people tell little white lies all the time. I think they're
Yeah,
corrosive.
yeah, I
I
agree.
adhere to this more than most couples therapists probably do.
Yeah,
I think even the basic stuff like, oh, I forgot that at the supermarket because I was in a rush, as opposed to I forgot that
yeah,
at the supermarket because I just genuinely didn't think of it. I didn't
yeah,
think,
sure.
and that is potentially a moment of, no, I completely dropped the ball. I'm really sorry. I know that was important to you, but instead you've got to make up a kind of little white lie to
Yeah,
justify your behavior, and it just corrodes that sense of like when my partner is saying something, I can trust the words that are coming out of their mouth, and I think that is
yeah. I agree with that. I take a
important.
kind of Puritan stance on it as well. So I
Yeah,
mean, I think we are aligned on that. I think that's important. It's the thing that I really value in my relationship. I really feel like that is a bedrock. I don't have any doubt about that at all, and I would imagine having doubts about that being a really difficult thing to contend with.
yeah.
The only thing that we would have said on another day is, I think we wrote a blog for Psych Today, didn't we, on radical honesty and what that might constitute in different settings. And it's too much to get into now, but I think there might be a moment. So, for example, your sort of fantasy life, and people have some really wild sexual fantasies, whether that all needs to be shared or not, I think we would be much more skeptical of, huh?
Big difference between being honest and being boundaryless and thoughtless
Forthcoming about everything, sure, sure.
about everything that's on your mind. Even if asked the question, what are your sexual fantasies, there is a
Yeah.
potentially holding conversation about what is this conversation actually about? What do you want to hear
Yeah.
about? What
There's another value at stake as well, isn't there, around tact and diplomacy and the
absolutely,
maturity of the relationship and et cetera, et cetera. But
absolutely.
I should move us on. Like the person you're in love with, what does that mean, and do you agree?
So I think this is probably getting to the idea of enjoying time with each other, being kind of friends as well as partners. It
Yeah,
plays into your point earlier around what is it going to be like when all the kids have left home? Is this someone that you actually want to spend the last 30, 40 years of your life growing
yeah,
old with?
yeah.
Hopefully this is someone who you've got some sort of shared interest with to some degree.
Mm.
But I think it's more than that. I think it's like you've got a long train journey together. Does that feel like an absolute ball ache? Or does it feel like a nice opportunity just to have a nice chat with
Yeah,
someone who you don't get enough chance to kind of properly spend time with
yeah,
in
yeah.
your day-to-day life? Something
Yeah,
like
it's good. Yeah. The last line was the thing that I balked at. It also helps if you still fancy each other rotten. And I don't think it needs to go that far. The couples I see are not in that place when they've been together for 10, 20, 30 years. Like that isn't their definition, and that feels like a sort of throwaway line, the kind of crap that gets talked about relationships, which it just rings hollow to me. It doesn't seem true.
I was
Be
listening to
friends.
a guy from the Kinsey Institute the other day on another pod, and he was talking about how as couples age, they have much less frequent sex, but the actual enjoyment of that sex tends to be as high, if not higher, than it used to be, which
Yeah,
suggests that you don't need to fancy each other rotten, you don't need to be having loads of sex,
yeah,
but if you like each other and kind of treat each other with the kind of basic respect and kindness and you laugh a lot together, for example, if you're lucky
yeah.
enough to have that, great, go for it. I don't think you need to fancy each other rotten, and I don't think most couples do after 30, 40, 50 years.
No, nor do I. Be friends with them.
This is your one though. Don't try and get
Oh, is it?
kind of thing of giving me three in a row. Be friends with them.
What does it mean be friends with them? I don't think I understand. No. Take the time to get to know someone as you would a friend. You enjoy one another's company. I think you've been talking about that, to be
But
honest.
maybe if I was to add something, though, you keep coming
Hmm.
back to this idea of we see people, couples who talk to each other like they wouldn't talk to their good friends. So there's something in the idea of friendship and companionship, which I think
Good,
is about
good.
rather than treating someone as a means to an end, is they're an end in themselves. They're someone who you care about and you care about hurting their feelings. Whereas we
Yeah.
see couples too much that they've got to a stage where they just don't really care whether they're hurting each other. And that's quite painful to see.
Yeah, it's wild, I think, that you would treat your friends better than your partner and you would treat your boss and co-workers better than your partner. And that is often a line that lands with people when I say, would you speak in that manner? You know, when they say, oh, I'm just telling it straight, or I just want to, would you say that to a key client? Would you say that to a boss? The answer is always no, they wouldn't. Or would they adopt that tone with somebody? It's kind of wild how we do that at home. Give them room to grow. I think we both would be keen on that idea, huh?
Yes, I'm not sure I'd necessarily use the language of growth. I think
No.
that's bandied around a bit too much.
Yep. Yep.
I don't think they need to grow. I think they
No.
can continue doing
Do
the
their
same
own
stuff
thing.
they've always done. But I think
Yeah.
it's important that they have an independent life and cultivate that independent life. I
Yeah.
think it helps with everything else in a relationship to give each other space and to feel like you've got your own interests, your own friends, your
Yeah.
own nights out. I think it helps with everything, including your sex life. I think it makes you more interesting and dynamic, and that's going to help keep passion alive longer as well, but also just fundamentally keep you interested in each other.
Have a short memory. I think what's meant there is no holding grudges and not hanging on to too much that's in the past. I would say it feels important lots of times. My observation is that couples come to therapy far too late, really, many years of resentment. And I think it's worth digging into some of that. I don't want to spend the whole of the time we've got together digging into all of it. It won't work. You know, it's almost limitless. There is a moment for drawing a line, resetting, going again, doing the next right thing. That sort of hanging on to grudges and there was this time at my
Yep.
sister's wedding when you did that, I think is potentially quite destructive.
I agree. I think the only counter example would be when there's been a significant breach of trust and that
Mm.
doesn't get brushed under the carpet, but
Yep.
get talked about and worked on and then left in the past, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Someone can't or shouldn't expect to have an affair, for example, get brought up multiple times 10, 20, 30 years into the future. Like there's a there's a period of time where a couple have to deal with that affair,
Yeah,
have to make amends for the affair, but then at some point, ideally, they draw a line under it and decide to move on. And the important word there is decide. I think if you decide to stay in a relationship with
yeah,
that,
I agree. Yeah,
then at some point you've got to kind of draw a line under it and not keep coming back to the same old grievances, no matter how large those grievances are.
I agree. Next one is let them be right, which I thought was kind of sensible insofar as I was thinking about it, sort of let them be right about loading the car, packing the dishwasher, let them be right about where to go on a holiday. Try it, you might like it. Greek island hopping might be really, really nice. I might be missing out, mightn't I? Those moments where it matters less to you if you haven't got strong preference for what you eat tonight, let the other person have it. I'm looking for those
Yeah.
opportunities. I've got quite a sort of domineering style sometimes.
No shit.
consciously I'm consciously trying to pick up on those moments where it just doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, good. Um, the phrase I use is "don't sweat the small stuff." I think you've used
Yeah,
it before. It's the same sort of idea.
yeah,
You don't want to turn into a doormat where you don't have any view.
no,
I think
no.
that's as tiresome as someone who's trying to dominate all the time.
It
Just
is, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the counter to it, isn't it? The thing that we maybe see slightly differently. I say sometimes that those things that you don't speak up for, that you do actually care about, end up building a resentment, and it comes up and up and up, and it's reaches the tipping point, or it's the straw that broke the camel's back. So I think there is, if you can let it go, let it go. That would be my advice. But if it actually meant something to you, then the trick would be to speak up for that at the point at which it meant something to you. Lower down the scale so that
yeah,
you can hit it in a reasonable way and ask for what you want without being accusatory or doing an ultimatum or
yeah.
doing character assassination.
There's an aspect of the Gottman's work that comes in here, isn't there, about the positive affirmations and how often are you saying nice, constructive things to your partner compared to how
Mm.
many times are you trying to, in effect, tell them that they're doing something wrong, even if it's not
Sure.
that. Also, it's
Yeah.
the other side of that coin, isn't it? Is every time you're saying a negative thing, you're potentially missing
Yeah.
the opportunity to say something.
Yeah, and there's a bit of enlightened self-interest there, isn't there? There's a bit of the boy who cried wolf. Like if you've got a moment where you want to say it, that will land, likely will land better if you are not saying it every time and every moment, and everything that that person does is, flawed in some way.
Good. Last one. Partner with someone competent. I think it's fair to say you have.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it was a sort of peculiar one when I read it, and I was like, no, that's actually that was surprisingly, interesting and eye-opening. I wouldn't necessarily have had that on a list that I'd have generated, but I thought it was good, and
I agree.
it's important to me. And I think it's, for me, it was a less conscious choice, but it's turned out to be really important in terms of keeping my life on the straight and narrow. And I think of competence as, kind of having an engine to get through the day, do the childcare, be a really good co-parent and all of those sorts of things. So yeah, I'm deeply grateful for having made that choice.
I think it partly depends on what sort of life you want to live to some
Agree.
degree. I think you and I have
Agree.
lives that depend on very competent partners, right? I
Yeah,
think other people
yeah,
don't need that
I
quite
agree.
as much.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think it's one of the items on that list of 16 that surprised me. But then on
Yeah,
reflection, I thought actually that's better than some of the motherhood and apple pie things that people think
yeah,
that
yeah,
that actually, if I wasn't in a relationship with someone competent, I think it would annoy me. I think it would frustrate me. I think
yeah,
it would
sure.
lead to tension in the household in a
I
way that I
agree.
struggle to just tolerate.
Yeah, and I think we're coming at it from a
It's
bit of a
more about me
bourgeois.
as much as anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I agree. I think we're coming at it in quite a bourgeois sort of way, right? And I'm thinking of, getting kids to swimming lessons on time and making sure they've got what they need for whatever special activities going on at school. But I also think like the people who I see who are much more adventurous in spirit and, for example, are more nomadic and are around the world, the partners they're with are competent to book airline tickets, turn up at the right place, do all of that scheduling, and just have fun, to know where the fun is, where the party is, to have the resources and the wherewithal to get there. It's a different kind of competence, but that too is competence, huh?
Yeah, I agree. And some of the skills we're talking about around managing conflict, you could probably throw into that mix as well, like
I
a
agree.
sort of thing. But
Yeah, competence have a hard conversation. Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
probably a pretty good.
Pretty good list.
We'll
Pretty good list. Yeah.
we'll put it in the show notes. Is there anything that kind of jumps out at you that isn't there, maybe before we finish?
No, not really. I thought it was a decent list. I think the thing that I would maybe just underline, having you mentioned this up front, is I think some of these things are in the form of a skill. So it's fine to say do that, but it's like, okay, so how do I do that? There's the how bit, isn't there? So lots of things can be spoken about in really simple terms. The instructions for walking a tightrope, one foot in front of the other, maintain balance, very, very difficult to do. You're going to need to break that down. You're going to need to practice, practice, practice. So I thought the only thing that was not really in there was that broader notion that all of this is well and good, but actually it's really hard to do some of these things. You will fail at them and you will need to repeat it over and over. And sometimes it would be really helpful to have a bit of skilled guidance while you do that.
Good. Luckily, at some point, hopefully, we've got a book coming out on those very skills. One day, one
One
day.
day. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
But right now, we probably need to finish up and go away and talk about making that work.
Yeah. All right.
Good.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Take care. See you soon.